Well, hey there. Good afternoon to you. 406 now. Newstalk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up 4:30, Steven Camarota joins us from the Center for Immigration Studies with a brand new report on the use of welfare by all those many millions of illegal aliens who are pouring across our borders. Steven's got the new data for us. And then the Attorney General of the state of Tennessee, Jonathan Skrmetti, will be with us today at 5:30. We talked to him about his state's lawsuit against BlackRock, a major company, super wealthy, using your retirement money to advance a left-wing agenda called ESG. Attorney General Skrmetti will be here again at 5:30. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A programming note for you. Tomorrow, we will have an interview of some length with Tucker Carlson on the show. We're going to talk with Tucker for, like I said, I say some length because I actually don't know how long this interview is going to go. Right now we have, I believe, 40 or so minutes allotted. So we've got quite a bit of time that we'll be spending with Tucker Carlson. And we are going to air that interview tomorrow during the program. I will be speaking with him in the morning. We'll do a pre-record and then we'll share it with you on the air tomorrow afternoon. The exact framing and timing of all of it is TBD, but Tucker will be joining the show tomorrow, so don't miss it. You'll be able to hear that right here on WMAL, and excited to chat with him about everything going on in his life, especially since Fox canned him. Unusual, the circumstances still. It's like, is there a contract of some kind that you're under? What's the deal there? And as far as I can tell, based on everything he said about this publicly and in my private conversations with him, we still don't know fully what the rationale was, but he seems content with it. He seems very at peace with all of this. Like, oh, he's just moving on to the next thing. And it was their company, and they decided to part ways, and that's fine. That's kind of how he's been approaching all of this. So we'll get into some of those details with him tomorrow on the show. So, again, tune in, as always, 3 to 6 p.m. right here on WMAL. We'll have Tucker Carlson with us tomorrow. Let's see. I've got an update for you on the president of Harvard, a woman by the name of Claudine Gay. Everything is gay with these people. Why does everything have to be gay? Claudine Gay, the Harvard president, she has been accused of plagiarizing big portions of her academic work, her dissertation, as well, and she survived the accusations. Harvard said, oh, she made some mistakes, but we put a request into the various places where all of this has been published, and they're going to add citations and quotation marks, and everything's fine, and don't you worry your little heads. Plagiarism's okay, was basically what Harvard said, at least when it comes to the president of Harvard. Now, she was involved in expelling students from the institution who had been guilty of plagiarism, but she's held to a completely different standard because, what's the phrase? It's not hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. Yeah, that's what's happening at Harvard with Claudine Gay. Well, we've got an update on this story. Aaron Sibarium at the Washington Free Beacon. Brand new information here. Fresh allegations of plagiarism unearthed in official academic complaint against Claudine Gay. Harvard University on Tuesday, that would be today, received a complaint outlining over 40 allegations of plagiarism against its embattled president, Claudine Gay. The document paints a picture of a pattern of misconduct more extensive than has previously been reported and puts the Harvard Corporation, the university's governing body, which said it initiated an independent review of Gay's scholarship and issued a statement of support for her leadership, back in the spotlight. The new allegations, which were submitted to Harvard's research integrity officer, Stacy Springs, include the examples reported by the Washington Free Beacon and other outlets. Yeah, the Free Beacon was like one of the only places, a couple of places did this. Chris Rufo did, the Washington Free Beacon, but most of the corporate media were running a protection racket for Harvard's president. But they reported in some detail, the Free Beacon and Chris Rufo, on all of the times that this Claudine Gay character had stolen other people's work and passed it off as her own. The new allegations include those examples, as well as dozens of additional cases in which Gay quoted or paraphrased authors without proper attribution, according to a copy of the complaint that was received today by the Washington Free Beacon. They range from missing quotation marks around a few phrases or sentences to entire paragraphs lifted verbatim. Let me pause here and say, hey, if there are any kids or school-age kids listening to me or college-age students listening to me, don't do what the president of Harvard did. Don't steal other people's work. Your obligation is to write on your own. Do your research, put it in your own words. That's how it's supposed to be. Not what this lady did, the president of Harvard. The full list of examples spans 7 of Gay's publications, 2 more than previously reported, which comprise almost half of her scholarly output. Though the Harvard Corporation said earlier this month that it initiated an independent review of Gay's work in October and found no violation of Harvard's standards for research misconduct, that probe focused on just 3 papers. Quote, "It is impossible that your office has already reviewed the entirety of these materials," the complaint says, as many have not been previously reported or submitted. The Free Beacon says that all allegations of faculty plagiarism must be reviewed by Harvard's research integrity officer, according to the school's official policies, and if deemed credible, are referred for further investigation. A guilty finding can result in a range of consequences, including the following: suspension, rank reduction, and termination of employment. In determining the appropriate sanction, the school claims to consider whether the misconduct was an isolated event or a part of a pattern. What does this tell you? If half of her scholarly work, if you can call it that, is comprised of stealing other people's work, is this a pattern or is it an isolated event? Well, yeah, it's a pattern. It's definitionally a pattern. She keeps on stealing for all of the things that she compiles and passes off as her own scholarly work. And one of the funniest examples of this is that in her dissertation, Chris Rufo shared this today from the complaint. In her dissertation, Claudine Gay, again, the president of Harvard, plagiarized the language of her acknowledgement from the acknowledgement of another scholar without citing the source. She couldn't even say thank you without plagiarizing the language, Chris Rufo writes. How funny is this? So the acknowledgement is obviously where you thank people for their contributions to the work that you did. So-and-so was so helpful in all of my research. Thank you to so-and-so for giving me good advice. Thank you, thank you, thank you, right? The acknowledgement. She plagiarized it. She stole it from someone else's acknowledgement. And I can quote here. I'm going to quote from some of the language here. So this is Claudine Gay. This is at least from Claudine Gay's dissertation. This is stolen now. She writes, "I'm also grateful to Gary. As a methodologist, he reminded me of the importance of getting the data right and following where they lead without fear or favor." That's funny. So now we look at another woman's writing. Her name's Jennifer Hawkschild, writing in 1996. She wrote, "Sandy Jenks showed me the importance of getting the data right and of following where they lead without fear or favor." Back to Claudine Gay. What else did she write here? She said, "From kindergarten through graduate school," she's thanking her parents here. "Finally, I want to thank my family, 2 wonderful parents and an older brother. From kindergarten through graduate school, they celebrated my every accomplishment, forced me to laugh when I'd lost my sense of humor, drove me harder than I sometimes wanted to be driven, and gave me the confidence that I could achieve." All right, back to Hawkschild. What did she write? She wrote of Sandy Jenks, "His example of iconoclasm about what the right answer is, combined with passion for finding the right answer, quote, drove me much harder than I sometimes wanted to be driven." It's the same. It's not even similar phrasing. It's word for word, bar for bar, the same exact wording. Stolen by none other than the president of, is Harvard the most prestigious university on the planet? It's up there. It's one of those places where you're like, what's at the tippy top of the list? Well, Harvard, you see? Harvard University, top of the list. Yeah, the president of Harvard stole what she passed off as her academic research. And at this point has faced no consequences. Now, she is, this should have to not be discussed at all, but in today's America, this is what the left has built. She is a black woman. Is she a lesbian? Do we know? Have we established that? Sometimes that's added in as further protection. So therefore, she needs to be held to a different standard, a lower standard. That's what the left has said. So she can't be guilty simply of these sins. No, we need more. We need more evidence. She needs to have murdered a man in cold blood. No, not a woman. She needs to have murdered a different black lesbian woman in cold blood before we take seriously that she's guilty of anything that calls for her to not have this job. Because, otherwise she'll survive. She's fine. She's fine. She's held to a different standard than you are. If your kid cheated and stole work and then included it in their application to Harvard, and that was discovered, not only would they be banished, but Harvard would be working to make sure that they didn't find a job anywhere for the rest of their life. Claudine Gay gets to stay president of the institution because she's historic, don't you see? And that's all you need. You don't have to be impressive. You can steal other people's work if you are historic, right? Just ask Corinne Jean-Pierre. Corinne. She's only in that job, as she's even said herself, because she's historic. She's historic. It's not about whether she's capable of it. She's obviously not. She's not capable of it. But she is a black female lesbian immigrant. And so for that reason, it doesn't matter how bad she is at the job. She's held to a different standard than you would be. If you got up there and you didn't have any answers and you just kept reading from your stupid little book and weren't able to tell anybody anything and then got all huffy when people asked you real questions, you'd be fired. Not Corinne. Not Corinne. She's insulated from all of that. Consequences? Not for her. Not for her. She has no sense of shame about it, too. Imagine being her. So she doesn't actually know the answers to any of the questions, and they brought in a ringer. They brought in John Kirby, right? And so his job is to lie in a more sophisticated way than Corinne is even capable of. That's why he does the adult press briefing. But wouldn't you, if you were the White House press secretary, wouldn't you have some sense of self-worth and dignity, right? Wouldn't it? Like, to the point that you're like, no, I'm not letting a ringer come in and do my job because I'm incapable of it. No, I'm not. No, I'm totally capable of it. I can absolutely do this. Nope. No, she has no self-respect whatsoever. She's like, yeah, John Kirby, let him do it. I don't have answers to these questions. I don't know anything. So that's what's going on here. And I do have updates coming up for you on Joe Biden. There's always stories popping up that at first blush look like, for instance, we got a story today about Biden that he is, it's hard to keep Biden under control. Biden's just doing too many things. He's just so presidential, but everyone's concerned that he's so old and he should slow it down a little bit, take things easy. And this is the stuff that's getting out there. And of course, I'm reading this going, obviously this is being leaked from the White House. There's a point to all of this. It's not designed to make Joe Biden look bad. In fact, it's designed to make him look good. I'll share that with you in a moment. It's 4:19 now. Political outlet Axios has a report today headlined, Biden is reluctant to accept his old age, aides say. Oh, he's reluctant. How is that manifesting itself? President Biden's reluctance to acknowledge his physical limitations at age 81 is causing some tension on his team as senior aides and First Lady Jill Biden push him to rest more and be vigilant about his health going into 2024. Current and former aides say Biden is extraordinarily energetic for his age. Okay, in case you're wondering if this is a scam. That sentence, current and former aides say Biden is extraordinarily energetic for his age. Have you seen evidence of this? Him springing across the South Lawn. See ya, fellas. He's like running to Marine One. Gotta go. He jumps up 2 steps at a time. Are you seeing any of this? No, of course not. You're seeing literally the exact opposite. But his repeated insistence that he feels so young can draw eye rolls. Some current and former aides believe Biden doesn't realize how old he can come across. In conversations with aides and friends, Biden frequently says some version of, I feel so much younger than my age. Yeah, he's senile. That's why he would say that. He's also been lying for his whole career. So one or the other. It's either his senility or his lack of integrity. Managing Biden's schedule and energy has become crucial to his reelection campaign, given widespread voter concerns about his ability to do the job until January 2029, when he will be 186. 86. He's getting up there, though. Current and former Biden aides say he often pushes to do more travel and events than they think he should. Biden pushing up against his limits sometimes creates a cycle in which he wears himself out, and then he appears fatigued during public events. Oh, okay, I see. So whenever we see him in public and he's barely able to do the job, that's after a very long day's work. He's just been busting his tail. He used all of that glorious youthful energy out of your sight. He was just, he was taking command of the room. He was making sure that he was watching what the Navy SEALs were doing on their latest raid. He was telling each of them where they should be, who should clear the door first, that kind of stuff. He was all over it. And Biden, it's just ridiculous. This whole story, what is this? Why do you see a story like this? Because somebody in the White House wants the public to operate under the assumption that Joe Biden is youthful, that he's full of energy, that he's so busy saving the planet that not even the White House staff can keep up with him. Slow down, Joe, so the rest of us can catch up to you. You're doing so great. We just want to be there to see you finish. That's the lie that you're being served today. And it's always this way. Earlier this week, we saw that Obama report, right? Obama concerned that Joe Biden's going to lose the election. What do you think that's about? Obama world is about as controlled as it gets when it comes to leaks about what Obama is thinking. It's theatrical. It's designed. Obama expressing concern about Biden is only meant for one thing. It's meant to energize all of the organs dedicated on the left to ensuring that a husk of a man like Joe Biden returns to the Oval Office. That's what it is. It's about supercharging their operations. Obama's expressing concern. Better get out my checkbook. Better fire up the engines here. Better get the activists on the streets. Better cause the chaos necessary. Better meddle in the elections. Better get the Justice Department trying to imprison our political opponents. Move, move, move. Obama has issued the command. Coming up, Steven Camarota will be with us from the Center for Immigration Studies. He'll talk to us about a new report that they have on how illegal immigrants are using welfare. Good afternoon to you. 4:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Jonathan Skrmetti will be with us. He's the Attorney General from the state of Tennessee. He's got a brand new lawsuit against one of the big asset managers, BlackRock. It's the first of its kind lawsuit over the use of retirement accounts in order to advance the left's destructive agenda. We'll talk to the Attorney General about that at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. If you're naive enough, you kind of think, well, if you are an immigrant to the country, isn't it illegal to use welfare? It's not quite so easy as that. In fact, welfare use very high among immigrant households, and definitely high among illegal immigrant households. For more on this, let's bring in Steven Camarota. He's the Director of Research for the Center for Immigration Studies, and he's got the information today. Steven, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, it is true that there are categories of welfare normally that, say, an illegal immigrant is not supposed to have access to, right?
That is true, yes.
But you have a report today demonstrating that despite those barricades, there's a lot of welfare use going on.
What we find based on the survey of income and program participation, this is just government use data, is that 54% of all immigrant households use at least one of the major welfare programs. And they're actually using several at once, which is typical of most people who are on welfare. And I can explain how that is, but basically we also estimate that it's 59% for households headed by illegal immigrants and 52% for households headed by legal immigrants. So both groups are high.
Okay. So that's a massive number. And do you have a comparison to, American citizens, how that stacks up?
Yeah, it may shock you, but American citizens are also very high at 39%. So the immigrants have higher rates. The difference is statistically significant, but the rates for the U.S. born are by no means low. No,
lots of Americans on welfare as well. But those are Americans. Those are people who are in the country, and so that makes sense that if we're going to have welfare that would apply to American citizens. How is it that illegal immigrants in particular ended up tapping into our welfare system?
Yeah, well, they can receive benefits on behalf of U.S.-born children who have automatic citizenship and full welfare eligibility. There are also some programs like WIC, the Women, Infants, and Children's Nutrition Program, or free school lunch that everyone can get. There is no test about whether you're legally in the country. In addition to that, there are a number of states specifically that give things like Medicaid and food stamps to illegal immigrants, even if they don't have U.S.-born children. And also, any illegal immigrant with work authorization, now I know this may surprise your listeners, but at a minimum, we've actually given Social Security numbers and work authorization to at least 2 million immigrants in recent years. And as a consequence, those individuals can and do at very high rates receive cash payments from what's called the Earned Income Tax Credit. So what happens is you work, you don't pay any federal income tax, and say for like a typical family of four, you get a check instead for like often like $4,000, say.
In the form of what we normally think of as a tax refund?
Yeah, it's not a refund, though. You don't pay any taxes. You get all your money back if you paid any in, but then you get a cash payment from the Earned Income Tax Credit. So it is unambiguously a welfare program, although they call it a tax credit. It's not money you're getting back. It's just a cash payment.
Right. It's money that the taxpayers are giving to you, having not paid taxes.
That's right. But to be clear, we have no evidence this is being done fraudulently. There probably is some of that going on, but this is just self-reported. That's the thing to understand. The actual rates are higher. This is what people tell the government in the survey they're using. The actual rates, actually, as I say, are higher.
Yes.
But the point is, this is not cheating. They are allowed to do this. This is the way the system is designed.
So 59% of households led by illegal immigrants are receiving welfare payments from the United States. These are huge numbers. How does a government even plan ahead for something like this? I thought that the way the government operates is you budget for the year ahead, but we're having millions upon millions of people crossing our border every day. How do we even get ready for that?
Well, you're certainly right to wonder. In the long term, the decision, say, that the administration's taken just to release 2.7 million illegal immigrants in the United States at the border, that decision alone is going eventually to come with a big welfare cost to the American taxpayer. But since, anytime we are short of money at the federal level, we just borrow more. That's how this system works. These entitlements, they're simply funded. If you're eligible, you get the check. If you're eligible, you get the food stamps. If you're eligible, you can live in the public housing, and so on. So in that context, we just spend the money and then borrow it if we don't have it. And yeah, you're right. What's happening at the border has profound implications for the welfare system and taxpayers.
So, Steven Camarota, what is the size of the bill that Americans are paying for all of this welfare?
Yeah, so that is much more difficult to exactly calculate. These programs that we looked at, you can't look at all the programs. There are lots of others we're not able to discern from this survey. But these programs cost about $900 billion a year, and it's safe to assume that somewhere between 10 and 15%, maybe more, of the costs are going to immigrants, maybe 20%. So you could be looking at $150 billion minimum in welfare costs to immigrants overall, with maybe half of that or a third of it going to illegal immigrants. I mean, I think the key point here is, well, I want to tell your listeners one other thing. Most of these folks do work. That's not what's driving it. You can work and get all these benefits. I could explain how, but the way it works is if your income's low enough. So say you had a family of four with a mom and dad who both work and two kids, but if you make less than $40,000 a year, you can get WIC and free school lunch and Medicaid and live in public housing, and you would get the Earned Income Tax Credit. It's all based on income, not whether you work or not. People think welfare is just for non-workers. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Let me just say it this way. If you had to put this in a bumper sticker, there's a high cost to cheap labor. Bringing in immigrant workers does end up costing the taxpayer a lot of money if the workers are poor, at the bottom end of the labor market.
So when people are arriving here in the country, what kind of welcome packet are they getting from the Biden administration? Are they being directed to all of these welfare programs?
Well, people are being made aware. If you go to, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website, welfare is one of the things that it does introduce you to. But remember, once they arrive at the local level, there's every incentive for the local bureaucracy to get you signed up so that maybe you can get into public housing, to
Right.
get you health care and things like that, particularly the children. And we understand why that is. We're a very humane, generous society. But that is the consequence. So there's a whole infrastructure in place to help immigrants, even newly arrived people, even people who are in the country illegally, to get access to these programs. And they are reasonably effective government bureaucracy at that.
Amazing. And what we're talking about is just the welfare component. It is not the impact that illegals have, for instance, on infrastructure or the extent to which we're paying for schooling for illegal immigrants. That's not what you're talking about here. You're talking about just broadly welfare programs.
Right. Public education would be one. We spend very, very roughly $15,000 a year per kid. So there are about 4 or 5 million children of illegal immigrants in public schools. So you can do the math there, and you can see how quickly that becomes a very large number, $100 billion, that kind of thing on public education. But again, most of those kids are U.S. born, the vast majority. See, that's the thing you have to understand. It's very hard to stop this from happening once you allow people into the country. People say, well, look, folks can come and get a job, but we just won't let them use the welfare. That was the idea of the 96 welfare reform law. But that can't happen. Not in our society, not with citizen children, not given the generosity, not given the political and practical realities. This is what happens. The very large fraction work but struggle to support themselves and their children, so turn to the American taxpayer.
But it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle because what we've done is we've created an incentive structure for people to illegally immigrate into the country, knowing that on the other end, they're going to have an entire government apparatus that's dedicated to their well-being and giving them money, giving them welfare, giving them transportation, bringing them to the city of their choice. At that point, it's like, why not illegally immigrate to the United States? There's gold waiting at the end of the rainbow for me.
Yes, obviously, most immigrants don't come necessarily with the idea that they're going to get on welfare, but the programs that are available makes illegal immigration more attractive, and it makes it less likely people will want to go home. So again, most people don't come with the idea, hey, I'm going to sign up for these programs, but nonetheless, they become aware of it pretty quick. It is an attraction to some extent,
yes,
and it's one of the reasons they don't want to go home, too. So, yes, you're right.
Is this, in terms of, there's some conversation about what it looks like if Trump becomes president and whether or not he'll actually be able to undertake an effort to deport people who are here illegally. By being on these welfare programs, is the government aware of who is illegal and who is not?
Well, technically, very often in the case of illegals, they don't keep track of that as it's a matter of policy, like for the WIC program, or it's the U.S.-born children who are getting it. So technically, the parents aren't getting it. So you can get food stamps and the temporary assistance to needy family program and cash from that, and you are not really the person getting it. The U.S.-born child is. But sure, could we use this administrative data to help us enforce the law? We probably could, but there are all kinds of reasons why that's difficult, including laws about confidentiality that make it very difficult to use the administrative data. I don't know that we need it. Well, what we'd have to start doing is just actually enforcing the law. Well, we'll see if that happens. But right now, I think what this reminds us is that there are a cascading series of consequences for society of tolerating widespread illegal immigration, and one of them is for the welfare system.
Yeah, big time. So, lastly, you're looking at just all these immigrants, illegal immigrants who are on welfare. What is the trajectory of all of these programs? How unsustainable is this arrangement?
Well, look, there's lots of things that's unsustainable about the federal government. So I wouldn't want to say that immigrants are the thing that's going to break the bank. But it's certainly true that, especially for programs like Medicaid, that, if you have a lot more low-income people that you've allowed into your country who can't afford health care, and so the taxpayer's paying for it, that is an area where we're going to see more and more strain on the federal government because of our immigration policies.
Yeah, and at the expense of our welfare obligations to American citizens too. So that's it's just
that's true, right? There's less we can do for our own poor. And by the way, the reason so many immigrants are poor is very simple. So many arrive in the United States with very modest levels of education. As I said, it's not because they don't work. It's they typically do work, and that's to their credit. But they have such modest levels of education on average that in the modern American economy, they just don't make much. And as a result, they and their children qualify for these programs.
Yeah, and their ambition gets them out of the country that they could be helping, which is the country of origin. Steven Camarota, thank you very much, again, with the Center for Immigration Studies for your findings, helping give us some more information on something. The media, very rarely want to dig into these issues, if at all. I'm grateful that you have. Thank you, sir. All right, let's go to the phones. We've got Bob calling in from Manassas, line 4. Bob, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. How are you? I just want to make a quick point that we need to keep pushing tougher immigration laws. As a Latino, I can tell you that within our community, we want to stop this illegal immigration to the country because it hurts those that are here legally and trying to do it the good way.
Well, it's a total disaster for everybody who is here legally or who's an American citizen. It's a total disaster. You don't want a country that's this out of control, do you?
Correct. Yeah, of course not. And yeah, we need not to be scared by Democrats telling us that it's a losing issue. It is a winning issue within the Latino community because we want stricter immigration reform because we want a better future for people who are here legally.
Yes.
And doing things the right way.
I noticed that many of the Latino majority border communities down in Texas and Arizona in the last presidential election, they voted for Trump. So you're looking at something of a sea change because broadly, Latino is such a bad category of people to describe because it's such a diverse category of people in terms of their sentiment. But insofar as we use it, it's a coin toss whether you're going to vote for a Democrat or a Republican. It's not really defining anymore, is it, Bob?
No, it's not. Completely not. Because one more point that us Latinos, we don't like to murder our babies. We love our babies.
Yes.
Each time that our wives are pregnant, we're happy. So that's another issue. Like Democrats have us understood completely wrong. And for the longest time, they scared us with immigration. We're going to give you papers. We're going to do this for you. And they never do it. And we have woken up to that because it's 2 or 3 generations now that we're here. So we understand how their game is played, and it's not working anymore.
Yeah, thank you, Bob, for that. Yeah, I'd say, and for legal immigrants out there, Latino or otherwise, they tend to have some of the best perspective on how great it is to be here in this country. Bob, thank you. Really appreciate that call. Let me go to Ken in Woodbridge here on line 5. Ken, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Love your show always. Hey, I got just a couple quick things. One is that you talk about the costs. Okay, your gentleman, your guest on that you had, they're not just the welfare, but they're
right.
They're overwhelming our hospitals.
Yes.
They use the emergency room as their primary care physician.
Yep.
Try to get into a hospital emergency room yourself. It's very difficult. The assimilation problem.
Huge.
They come over, and it's really difficult for them to assimilate. They don't know the language. The schools are being overwhelmed because they don't have enough teachers who understand Spanish.
Well, on the assimilation point, let me pause on that because that's such a valuable one, Ken, which is, in order to have a functioning country with an immigration system that's as generous as ours is, you've got to bring in people at a pace that allows them to assimilate, right? Like you can't add everybody all at once. You've got to add people slowly enough that they can assimilate into the existing culture and help, move the country forward together. But if you just overwhelm the system with people from different countries who come here illegally, who speak different languages, who have different cultures, and nobody assimilates, what do you get, Ken? You get the Tower of Babel. You get an environment where people can't work together, and the whole thing falls apart.
That's right. That's right. There are neighbors who work at churches to try. They have dropped their program for teaching English. They stopped coming. They stopped coming to the classes.
Yeah, because the left is creating an environment where we don't share things anymore. We don't have something in common, and that's by design. Ken, thank you. Appreciate the call and the wisdom. Coming up, Jonathan Skrmetti is the Attorney General of Tennessee. He'll join me here in the next hour as we talk about, these out-of-control corporations using your retirement money to advance the left's agenda. That's ahead, and your calls as well on The Vince Coglianese Show.